and I'm a senior QA analyst at M&M Direct. Now, one thing you may notice is that my job title doesn't actually include the word automation. And the main reason for that is I've never actually held a role that specialized in test automation. That hasn't meant I haven't done any of it. And I've still got quite a lot of experience in it. And I think the reason I'm telling you this is because you don't have to specialize in test automation to to do work to become a test automation developer. You can still do that alongside the many other vital roles that are involved in testing. Um, so before we carry on though, I'm going to start with a story. Um, I used to do rock climbing. I used to love rock climbing. It was great fun. I've done it a little bit since, done that, but not so much in recent years. And there is a very good reason for that. On the 28th of May 2010, I went on a rock climbing trip in Snowdonia. I was rock climbing in the Clamberis Pass, and it didn't go too well. Unfortunately, I had an accident. I fell 80 foot down the rock face. Fortunately, I didn't hit my head, which probably would have killed me. I landed on my legs, but that had a few other complications. And now, how do I go next slide? Yes, so I broke both my femurs, both kneecaps, my left ankle, my right elbow, and a couple of ribs. And this did impact my ability to walk. Yes, the X-ray there is of my ankle. It's not supposed to look like that, as you can imagine. So obviously, this wasn't permanent. Luckily, I did get better, but this took a really long time. So it took several months of physio, exercising, strengthening my legs again, until I was able to walk again, and even longer before I could walk unaided. The photo on the right there is from our local fun run. I decided to sign up. I think it was about 9 months after the accident, and I signed up for the local fun run. This was a mile, and I managed to walk the entire way, which at the time was quite incredible for me, actually. As you can see, my mum followed me with a wheelchair in case I couldn't manage it. So the reason I'm telling you, when something like that happens, you don't go straight into running a marathon. You It takes years of training. You start small, you start easy, and then you start to build up. And even when I was able to walk again, it was probably about a year before I was off the wheelchair permanently. And it's probably about another 2 years after that before I was walking without crutches. And then even after that, I continued going to the gym, continued to exercise. And anyone who knows me now will probably not realize that I actually ever broke my legs. I can walk perfectly fine now. And I can quite comfortably run 5 kilometers. But that took many years of training. It didn't happen overnight. Um, and obviously these photos were taken 10 years ago. So it took there is a long process involved before you can actually, you know, start running again. And the same thing applies when you're doing test automation. You don't go straight into creating tests. You start small, you start easy. So you might start easy. You start by just running the tests. Now, even if a lot of people say that they can't code, or they're not technical, um, we are working in IT. That makes you technical. Just because you can't code doesn't make you test technical. And even if you can't code, doesn't mean you can't learn to code. So you just start nice and easy. You run the tests. And once you can run tests, you might then realize which one you then start analyzing the test results, look at the ones that fail and look at debugging, working out why they're failing. Sometimes it could be an issue with the application that's being tested. Sometimes it can be an issue with the test itself. So you can investigate and try and find out why is the test failing. And when you then realize why the test is failing, if it is an issue, you can then look at updating the existing tests, making small changes. You you can have when you make changes to an application, the tests will need to be updated. So you can then look at updating the tests. And then as new features get added, you may want to add new tests to it. So you build up to that, you eventually do that. And then finally, you can get onto setting up entire test frameworks by yourself. So you don't you need to ease into the role. You don't go straight into setting up a full test framework and creating new tests. Get to know the application, get to know the tests are already there before actually running, before you can walk. So I told you about my story with my injuries. I'll tell you a little bit about my actual story of how I got into test automation development. Um, I was lucky enough to I've been learning to program since I was at school. My first programming language I learnt was Pascal, where I was doing A level computing. I then went to university where I studied computer science, and there the main language was Java. We use many other languages as well, but the idea is once you know one language, you understand how they work. You can then move into other programming languages. You know, you don't need to focus on one. And then I started my first software testing job. Um, so when my first software testing job, basically went through a whole year where I didn't do any computer programming at all. But then I moved into developing the automated tests. And for this, all using C sharp. And this is quite scary for me because I've never done anything with C sharp before at all. This was a completely new programming language. But luckily, because I'd had my previous experience of programming, I was able to go straight into C sharp without just trying to familiarize myself with the syntax. And then I was able to go into developing automated tests. Now, my first experience didn't go so well, and there were several reasons for this. Um, at my job, we had no framework already in place. So I was developing it all completely from scratch. Also, we really didn't know what we wanted from test automation. It was sort of a case of, yeah, we want to do it. We want to do test automation, but we didn't really think of why we wanted to do it. Now, my previous programming experience meant that I had that confidence and that ability to learn, but this wasn't really enough. I basically went, it was partly my fault, partly the business's fault. When someone said test automation, it was almost a case of, oh, me, please. I want to do that. Me, pick me. I was a bit over eager. So I think that confidence and that ability to learn, it helped. But my first attempt didn't go so well. Luckily, I was able to learn from those mistakes. And my second attempt went a lot more successfully. So at least the first attempt, at least I had that learning experience from it, that experience which did help with success eventually. So the idea is you need I think you need several things to be successful as a test automation developer. Um, and the first thing is you want that experience. You want to really understand how they work before going straight into developing a whole framework at once. So these are some things I think you need if you want to be a successful test automation engineer. You need knowledge, not just about test automation, but you also need knowledge about testing. I mentioned before that I've never been in a specialized test automation role. I personally wouldn't want to be in a specialized test automation role. Other people may differ from that, but that's just my personal preference. And the reason being is I firmly believe that test automation is part of the whole test strategy. It's not the test strategy. So you need to also have manual testing involved in there as well. And I also believe that I don't think I could make the right decisions with regards to test automation if I didn't have knowledge of the full strategy. So I need to also have experience from of manual testing as well. And you need knowledge of everything, not just test automation. And then you also need the skills to become a test automation engineer. So I remember someone once saying, and unfortunately I have not been able to find where I heard this from. Um, the test automation engineer needs to have the testing mindset, but the developer skill set. And I imagine most people listening are already testers and already have the mindset. If you haven't already, you just need to get the skill set as well, and you need experience. Um, you need to actually have get that experience, and that can to build and to help build on those skills as well. And those three are what you need from yourself. That's what you need to get to be able to come up with test automation. But you also need to have support and opportunities provided by the business that you work for. Um, Business needs to provide you with the opportunity to get into test automation. If you haven't got that opportunity, you just need to, you need to make yourself known, let people know that you are interested in being involved, and then they will give you the opportunity. And they also need to support it. So that means they need to give you the resources to learn and to practice and to get that experience. But also, they need to give you the support, the time, and the resources to actually continue developing the tests. If they're giving you all this work on testing manually, then you're not going to have the time for test automation. So they need to actually give you that time, um, and provide you with the opportunity to be able to carry on with it. And then finally, you need confidence, and that is going to come from both yourself by developing those skills and knowledge and experience, but also from the business too. But you need to have things from both yourself and from the business. So I'll talk about what you can do, what you as a person can do. First thing, you're going to need to learn to code. There are a lot of tools out there that codeless tools out there, but there's not always guarantee that the business is going to provide those particular resources. They may prefer to choose to use a framework that is more code heavy. So just to prepare for that situation, you want to learn to code. If you're working for a business that's already uses test automation, find out what language, that programming language they use, and learn that. If you don't, good popular ones, Python and Java seem to be the most popular ones. Most of my experience has been in C sharp. So one of those three is a good one. And then don't just learn the language, you need to actually practice it. Small, simple coding exercises. I put a picture of a book there, Python by Example. I've chosen that one because this year I decided to learn Python. No particular reason. I just wanted to see whether I could learn a new programming language. And I started by buying a book, and I chose this book just because it included that slogan on the front: "Learning to programming in 150 challenges." I love this book because it doesn't go into these deep explanations about how things work. It shows you code examples so that you can then learn from them. Um, it's definitely a book that I would recommend if you wanted to learn to program, and just work your way through the exercises that are in this book. It just provides enough explanation, but doesn't make you feel, doesn't have that too much explanation that make you feel almost scared to learn it. So that would be a book I recommend. But also, obviously, don't just learn to code. Also learn about test automation, but also actually testing in general. So watch webinars, meetups, conferences, read blogs and articles, and also just talk to people, hear other people's stories, hear about how they learned, and then see what you could apply from that. And just generally learn about the best practices. And sorry, I was getting a bit croaky there. Learn about the general best practice of test automation. Learn about how other businesses have applied it, and use that knowledge to think about how your current company could best apply it. Becoming a test automation advocate. So I mentioned the business needs to provide you with the opportunity. They need to know that you are interested in it. So talk about what you've learned, talk about your skills, become known within the business. Say, I want to be involved in test automation development. Because they may not provide you the opportunity if they don't know you're interested. So talk about it. If that business doesn't actually have have test automation framework in place yet, talk about the benefits of it. Let them know that it might be something worth doing, so that they then decide to get involved themselves. But finally, what I also mentioned, don't forget the other testing skills. Test automation isn't the only thing you need to know. You need to look at other test planning, test frameworks, test techniques, anything. Don't just focus on test automation. Those of you who work for a business, those of you who are already who work for a business that already have a framework in place, or part of a team, maybe heading a team that wants to introduce test automation, the first thing you need to do is provide time and resources for development and maintenance of the tests. Once the test framework is in place and you've got your tests in place, you're not going, it's not going to end there. You need to continue that. It's not, it's a journey, but there isn't always like a set destination in place. You need to continue with it. As the application changes, so the tests will also need to change. Now, if you don't already have an automation framework in place, please don't do what happened to me. Don't give it to someone who hasn't got the experience yet. Yeah, so if you are working for a business that doesn't yet have automation, isn't yet using test automation, and you want to get started, don't give the task to someone without experience. It will probably be absolutely terrifying for them. Give them, you want to maybe, if you haven't got anyone in the testing team with that knowledge and experience, maybe ask a developer to help them get started. Or even better, hire someone with experience. But don't give the job to one person. You want to involve the entire testing team. Um, you want them to you want to try and involve the entire testing team in those decisions on how to set up a framework, what tests to create, what tests will benefit will be the most benefit. You want to actually talk to them as well. So get involve the test team, entire test team, regardless of experience in automation. They will at least have knowledge on how best to how of the test strategy, and give you that and provide feedback on how and ideas about how best to apply it. Now, if you already have an automation framework in place, you want to provide the opportunity for testers to get involved. Um, don't give it to a single person with all, because they'd say if that one person leaves the business, suddenly all that knowledge is gone. So you want to get as many people involved as possible. Allocate time for learning and coaching so that they can, again, always give them that opportunity to get involved. And finally, really encourage people to get involved. Don't force them. Test automation isn't the only thing that testers need to do. And it is there are many other ways that a tester may want to develop their career. So if they're not interested, or it might be usually the reasons are either they're not interested at all or they don't have the confidence. So provide that encouragement, but don't force them. Don't say you have to do this. There are other ways in which they can get involved and contribute to the overall testing effort. So, it's quite a general thing. It's not Test automation isn't the only thing we should be doing. So I'm going to talk about like one of the best ways I've found with encouraging testers, helping them develop that confidence is using pair programming. Don't throw them straight in there into the deep end and have them developing alone. So I always start with starters doing demonstrations on showing them how a test is set up. Sometimes if I've had if I've done it, if I've updated a test and I suddenly think, I really should be showing the team this. I've almost undone all my work and then started again from scratch, showing them how I did it, explaining how the tests are set up, explaining the process for updating a broken test, how you might debug something and then fix it, and also the process of creating a new test from scratch. Showing them what you do, setting up the locators and then test, but explaining how it is done. I found this is actually also not good for the developer as well, because I always say, like, if you can't explain something simply, then you probably didn't understand it in the first place. So try and explain it. Good practice to try and explain something and just see what your knowledge actually is. Next stage would be to ask the tester to update or write a test, but this time provide them with detailed instructions. Now, I've suddenly found this is a lot easier with screen sharing and something I've definitely found with remote working, because I can't intervene at all. The tester is sharing the screen. I have to give them the instructions, and I can't go, hang on, let me do this for you. You can't do that. I've got to give them instructions. It's suddenly easier now with remote working. But yeah, just ask them to update the test, provide them with detailed verbal instructions, talk them through the process, tell them what to do, and gradually they'll understand what they're doing. Obviously, then once they are at that stage, you can just give them a ask them to update the test, but get them to do it. Observe, watch them do it. Um, Maybe ask them to explain what they're doing so that you can see if their understanding is as good as they think it is. Also, if they are stuck or about to make a mistake, then you need to intervene. You need to jump in and actually don't do that. So gradually you'll find that those moments will become less and less. And then finally, get them to develop alone. Ask them to create a test alone without being observed, but obviously be available to help out if required. I find even now, even the most experienced developer will ask for help, may need to ask for help from other people occasionally. Um, it's like it's a case of you don't need, there isn't you can't it is possible. There is nothing that you can't learn, but you shouldn't learn everything. Don't, nobody will understand everything. So there will be people within the team who have different specialisms, and they mainly have a general knowledge of everything else. So, and also I think the big question is don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. So, and actually make the tester aware of that. Make the tester aware that they don't need to know everything. They can ask for help. And honestly, that's my final point. Actually, really, don't try to learn everything at once. Really, don't. You don't need to understand everything. You'll just overload your brain. I know that with the current situation, there is a lot of pressure to upskill and learn something new. You can't go out, but then I think that can cause a real strain on your mental health. So, you know, keep bring back to my original message. Don't run before you can walk. Keep learn things slowly. Maybe come up with a plan of what to learn, and take it one at a time. Don't go straight into it. Um, it Getting into test automation development, it is going to be a journey. It's going to take time, um, and you need to get that experience. And even when you are a fully fledged test automation developer, the learning won't end there. You need to continue learning beyond that. Don't it never stops. So that's all I've got there. Thought I'd just take a bit of time to talk about some of my current projects. As I said, I'm not just learning. I'm not just sorry. I'm not just studying test automation. I am learning other things. So as I mentioned, I have my blog, louisegibbstest.wordpress.com. Um, One thing I've been doing a lot with the current situation, I've been watching a lot of webinars and posting sketch notes of them, and you will find a lot of them on my blog. I'm also at the moment trying to complete my the 30 days of quality challenge, which was set by the Ministry of Testing. I am going to provide a little link about that in the next slide. And it's literally it's taking a bit more than 30 days. By that I mean I've been doing it for 2 months now. But it's sort of like don't feel. I think it comes with don't try and learn everything at once. Don't feel pressure to keep going through that thing because you think you'll just exhaust yourself. If I was sticking very rigidly to that 30 days to do that challenge, I probably would have just given up like within like day 3 or something. So and also I wanted to talk about that because I'm not just learning about coding. I'm not just learning about programming. I'm learning about other things as well, other things around testing. And one thing about this challenge is having really make me rethink my definition of quality. So I'm really enjoying that challenge at the moment. I mentioned that I'm learning Python. I'm going through the exercises in the book Python by Example. Um, Also, I recently discovered these things called Python cones. I will have a link on that for the next page. And all it is, it's a set of tests that are already set up, but they're all failing. And you have to just work through them and make the test pass. And I find that's quite a good exercise to do because you're you're learning, you have the code already there. So you're not writing from scratch, you've already got things. So you're essentially debugging tests that are failing. So it's a good exercise to go through. And also, this has actually inspired me to set up my own little thing called Fix a SpecFlow test. Now, I use SpecFlow. I've used SpecFlow quite a lot for test automation in my career. I absolutely love it. It's a great thing, and I'm just sort of coming up with my own, writing my own tests that are then failing, just like the Python cones that someone has to fix. The ones I've created already, I've tested on my parents who have no programming experience at all, and they were pretty successful. I think they quite enjoyed the challenge. So they're not ready yet, but when they are, I will be sharing them. And also, I'm not just doing things related to testing. I have been taking part in a little fundraiser. Some of you might have heard about the 26 challenge. I think they chose 26 because of the length of the London Marathon, which was unfortunately cancelled. A lot of charities are unable to do their fundraising anymore, and they are struggling quite a lot because of the current pandemic. So I have taken part in a little fundraiser. I'm raising money for the Teenage Cancer Trust. If anyone can donate to it, even if it's just a couple of quid, I'll be so grateful. And what I'm doing is I'm just doing a little sewing challenge for myself, all related to the number 26 or 2.6. So hopefully, if you can donate, I'll be really grateful. Just some resources that may help you. The Test Automation University, they have courses related to so many different areas of test automation. So if there's a particular tool that you want to familiarize yourself with, they have several courses related to various different tools and frameworks which may help you learn or help you get started at least, and it's all free. There's the link for the Python cones I was telling you about. They're on GitHub. You just need to get that GitHub repository and the instructions. I think there were some instructions on how to get started with that. Military testing are a great place to go to for learning. They have so many webinars, meetups. I mentioned my 30 days of quality. You will find 30 days of testing. If you go to that link, there are many challenges on there, 30 days challenges. So if you want to learn something new, one of those challenges is a good way to get started. So there's one for API testing. There's one for, I think there's one for exploratory testing. There's one for test automation. And then obviously I'm doing the quality one at the moment. At the moment, they've recently released the DevOps one. So that's always a good place to go to. And obviously they're running a lot of meetups, they're recording them. They're also a good place to go to. They also have conference talks from their conferences available on there. Most of them you have to have a pro account, which costs, I can't remember how much it costs, but you can sign up to a free club account and they have a small number of them free. And also just going out there and meeting people is always a great way to learn as well. And if you go to meetup.com, it's probably how you got onto this talk itself. It's a great way to learn. Obviously with the current situation, they're all online now, but that shouldn't hamper your learning. Webinars are still a great way to meet people, ask questions. And finally, I mentioned my Sketchnotes. I thought I'd share this one only because it involves from a talk. Do we need to be an SDIT, obviously certified developer in test, which is one of the many names for a test automation developer? I like this one because it emphasizes that you don't need to focus on. There are many other areas to have specialized skills in, and also includes a possible journey for building test skills. Now, this isn't one that you might want to follow. It depends entirely on what is beneficial to you and the business you're currently working on, but it's still an interesting one to look at. Maybe a good example of a journey that you may want to set up for yourself. All these slides are available on, I have put a link up on my blog if you want to download these slides, and it also includes all my sketch notes as well, which you may find interesting to look at. And I realized I didn't put a slide on there for any questions. So I'll ask now, do you have any questions?